Moral Revolution community, welcome back to our podcast. I'm so glad you joined us today. We're going to dive into all things God's design for healthy sexuality. Let's talk about it.
Hello, welcome to the Moral Revolution podcast and YouTube for those of you who are actually seeing us and not just listening. For those who can see we have a very special guest today. I'm so excited. This is Mr. Damian Giacchino.
Oh,
Pastor
Mr.
Damian Giacchino, Reverend, Bishop, whatever title you want to go for. Damien and I go way back. We were both pastors in Sacramento. He's still there. He's an associate pastor at Real Life Church in Sacramento, California.
Yep. Shout out to Real Life. Come on.
916.
We miss you guys so much.
We miss Sacktown too. We love Reading. We love you, Reading. But we
Thank
do
you.
miss Sac a lot. But Damien and his wife Stacy are good friends of ours. Have 3 kids, little and big.
Yes. Little and big. Very spread out.
Yes, very spread out. You'll hear more of that. So thank you so much for being with us today.
Oh, it's an honor to be here. Thank you guys for having me.
Yes. And in case you're new or you haven't recognized this lovely lady, this is Sloan Wilson. She is the Moral Rev All Things woman. And we are also leading a new program course for all of you single ladies out there, coming at you soon or maybe live now, depending on when you're listening.
Who knows?
Yes, but this is Sloan. She's the go-to girl, so you'll get to hear more from her. So we're so excited. We're going to ask you a bajillion questions.
Let's do it.
We're going to sneak some in on you.
All right. Let's go.
But we'll start with this. Just if you want to give us like a 5-minute version of your story.
Yeah.
That's hard. That's pretty. That's like asking a lot.
You know what? I'll take a shot at it.
You do your best, and then we'll ask for the rest.
Yeah. Well, I grew up in a very eclectic family, very blended. My father came into my life, who wasn't my biological father, when I was about 2 years old. So my mother, she had 2 kids, married my dad. My mother was actually 28. My dad was actually 20.
Wow.
Right?
Yeah.
Wow. And he was Hawaiian and Portuguese, so my brothers and sisters from that marriage, Louis and Tori, mixed. Me and my brothers are mixed. So we just had a very mixed family dynamic. Loved the Lord in our home, but we didn't really go to church. So my parents instilled a lot of good biblical values. One of the values was don't have sex until you get married, but they never celebrated it. They just said don't do it. So it was always a mystery to me. I'll say fast forward. I went to private school. I think public school. I started going to public school 7th, 8th grade. That's when a lot of temptations started to come in, and girls started being interested in me, and I started being interested in girls, and a lot of peer pressure to just kind of start exploring my sexuality. I would say lost my virginity. I don't know if we're going into deep.
You are.
You're going dive right in.
We say all the words
We're jumping right in. I lost my virginity when I was about 13 or 14 years old.
Wow.
I remember not even wanting to lose it, but I wanted to be validated by the culture of men that were around me. And the culture that I grew up, masculinity was defined by your economic status, your sexual conquest, or your friendship status.
Wow.
So I did it to be accepted. I got the applause, but my soul felt very just dirty. It felt just at a bad place. I can tell that wasn't the decision I really wanted to make.
Wow.
Fast forward, I started to kind of just really pursue a life of promiscuity. I'll say from about 14 to about 23, just really didn't do relationships the right way. I remember I'm gonna back up a little bit. I remember being about 20 years old and getting a phone call from my son's mother, who at the time I didn't know I had a son, saying that my son, who at the time was 2.5 years old, hey, I think DJ could be yours.
Wow.
Yeah, crazy, right? And, I was really, really, really mad, really just frustrated, said a lot of ungodly things. I wasn't saved, BC, before Christ.
BC days.
But I remember that was kind of a ripple, one of the different things God did to kind of start getting my attention. And, I really wasn't living from the Lord, but I knew from family values that, if I wanted my life to go right, this is my responsibility if he ends up being my son. So I told God, if DJ's my son, I'll take on the responsibility of fatherhood. So took the test, went on Maury. No, what?
I was about to say, how we missed that part?
But they were like, you are 99.9 a father. And end up, that was one of the hardest things to embrace because we didn't have a bond right away.
Yeah,
And I remember telling God, you're going to have to put this love in my heart for my son. And I remember him doing that at a specific time. I won't go into those details, but really loved embracing fatherhood. At the time when I was 20, I would have thought that fatherhood would have took me from freedom, but fatherhood taught me about freedom.
Wow.
Taught me about responsibility, taught me about being selfless, right? And at that time in that culture, these things didn't look attractive. And it's interesting how Satan would make bondage look like freedom and freedom look like bondage.
That's such a good
And
point.
apart from choosing Jesus and marrying Stacy, I would say parenting DJ has been one of the most important decisions and just best decisions of my life.
Wow.
So 21 years old, into fathering, and made a lot of bad decisions. Ended up being incarcerated in prison, where I was facing 46 years in prison, and God supernaturally intervened. Gave me a prophetic dream that I was called to preach and teach. I thought I was going to be a real estate agent and a club promoter. So I didn't see that coming.
Different. Oh my gosh.
I didn't come from a lineage of preachers. I didn't come from a lineage of pastors. It was never prophetically spoken over my life.
Wow.
So again, I just had the family values. I knew where to go to when things got really tough. Get this prophetic dream, and in this dream, I'm preaching at the church that I previously was serving at for 10 years before I even knew that church.
Wow.
Get out, and I feel like God is like, hey, now that I gave you your freedom and you know what I'm calling you to do, one of the things I feel like he told me that I need to start conquering is my sexuality.
Wow.
Because that was something that was out of hand. So I truly believe in order to conquer your sexuality, you have to give it back to the one who created it. So I yielded that back to God, and I went on this journey from, I would say from the time I got out, I think I was about 23, 24, or from 22 to 25, 3 years plus, I went on this journey of just abstinence. Just breaking those soul ties, just really growing in my relationship with the Lord, knowing that what I really needed that I thought I was getting in romance was my intimacy with God. And then ended up meeting my beautiful, lovely wife, Stacy, at Bible college. And we met and dated and got married all in 13 months. So when you do it the right way, it don't have to take long.
Yeah.
Furthered my education, got my bachelor's in theology, my master's in counseling.
Oh, wow.
And in that whole process, God had gave me a message on the importance of not waking love too early. Because from the time I lost my virginity to about 22, 23 years old, I was just really misusing romance and love and really not treating women the way that I should treat them, coming from a misogynistic and a very unhealthy culture. So that's kind of like my story personally and my relational story. So now 11 years in, or January will be 11 years. And we have 3 kids. DJ, who's 19, he's at Fullerton studying kinesiology. I have Zoe, who's 5 going on 25.
Yes.
And I have my youngest son, Dominic, and we're done. We're done. I still got to do the part to make sure I'm done.
Yes, then you're not done, Damien. You're not done yet. You need to do your part.
But, I'm a little scared.
Just talk to Cole. He lined it up so that he could be on the couch during March Madness.
Okay, I need to talk to Cole, man. I need him to, play over me.
He timed it well. He's like, I'm out.
So smart.
I can't move.
There you
March
go.
Madness for the whole time. Awesome.
So I know that was longer than 5 minutes.
Oh,
no, that was great.
It was literally, I was astounded at how well you mapped that out. So, so beautiful, so powerful. So many questions. I'll let you go first.
Yeah, I had a question just burning in me when you were speaking. Okay, so you were saying that from the age of, you said 13.
About 13, 14,
Wow,
yes.
Until probably around 2023,
yeah.
you said?
Yeah,
that you
22,
kind of
23.
subscribe to hookup culture in a sense.
For sure. Yeah.
I want to know, even for the people who are listening, how did that really affect you? Because I feel like there's some people who, get involved in hookup culture, the over-sexualization of culture, without even realizing it. It just feels normal. It's just life. It's just, we watch TV. It's everywhere, and it just feels normal. How does it actually affect your spirit, your soul, and your body,
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I think it affects you on a spiritual level, a soul level, and a natural level. On a spiritual level, I think that you begin to compare a lot of your relationships to the previous relationships from the hookup culture. And I believe that it affected my ability to bond with people who were healthy. Because I don't think We don't believe God creates us to bond and break.
Yeah.
So I'm bonding on a sexual level and then breaking these bonds and then trying to bond with other people.
Yeah.
So it really, I think it really affected me in having healthy attachments because
Wow.
I would attach, unattach. And it just, I think it was unhealthy for my soul because I never properly asked myself, why am I reaching for physical intimacy?
Wow.
To the degree where I was neglecting things that I need to learn about myself. That
Yeah.
I'm reaching for sex, but I'm really alone. And when I'm alone, sex is not the answer. Romance is not the answer.
Yeah.
Intimacy is the answer. What is intimacy? Being vulnerable with healthy, non-romantic relationships. Being vulnerable with the Lord. Being in a community where you can be seen, where you can
Yeah.
be heard, where you can be loved, where you can be validated. That can meet the need of intimacy. But it takes work. It
Yeah.
requires you to be vulnerable.
Yeah.
It requires you to take risk of being rejected. So I avoided all those things and I just grabbed for physical intimacy,
Yeah.
which was a quick fix.
Yeah.
But it ended up hurting me later down the road. So
Yeah.
Wow. Another question I thought when you had that moment when you first lost your virginity and you're like, I totally did it just caving to peer pressure and knowing this is what it takes to be a man,
Yeah.
basically.
Wow.
What? And because I think there's hundreds of thousands of people. I mean, I remember seeing it even depicted in a show where I'm like, oh yeah, this is what
Yeah.
the real issue is at the core for a lot of guys. Our friends at Exodus Cry, their show,
Yeah.
they kind of in Liberated, they show the story of boys that are like, I'm just doing this because I think I have to.
Yeah.
To be accepted, to be normal, to not
Yeah.
have all these other things. So what do you think? What's the cure? Can you
Fix
just
it
fix
all
the
in
whole
5
world
minutes.
right
Yeah.
now, Damien?
You know, for me, I would just say for me, it was I needed validation. And I think a lot of men need fatherly validation. And although I had a present great dad in the home, he was such a young dad, right? He married my mom when she was 28 and had 2 kids. He was 20, so he was still learning how to become a man. So there was some areas in my life I needed some fatherly validation. I think fathers provide identity. They provide protection. So I didn't get these validation in my sex talks with my father. My mom would try to lead the sex talks, and it was very uncomfortable trying to talk to my mom
You mean
about
I
sex.
tried to talk to my
It's
son
like
about
always
that?
shoved into the mom too.
Yeah.
It's like you do it.
I think both parents should go
Yeah,
at it.
Exactly.
I
They
think because
should.
you need, it's a teamwork, right? So I think having some godly men that I look up to, which I did look up to my dad, validate like it's okay to not have sex. You're still a man. There's nothing wrong with you. It's okay to protect your virtue. I didn't have that. All the older guys or older men, from my uncles to my cousins, they was like, "You want to put some hair on your chest?"
Yeah.
They were saying these crazy reasons to help me become a man, and because I wanted to be validated, because I wanted intimacy, because I wanted to belong. I chose a wrong way to be validated, wrong way to belong. So, I think fatherhood helps in motherhood. I think pouring into our kids and really starting it young. My parents tried to have the conversation with me when I was already thinking about it, already into it. So,
That's awesome.
That's a great question. I think even just one little side question I'd have for even the men that are listening who kind of found themselves in that spot and they're hearing this and they're like, yeah, you know what? I want to get out of hookup culture. I want to have healthy fathers speaking in my life. I maybe don't have a dad who's around, or I maybe don't have like this community that's readily available for me. Like, what do you feel like would be good tips for them to get fatherhood, like speaking into their
absolutely. I think God provides coaches, mentors, teachers, pastors.
Yeah.
I think you should start with community. I think about, I was reading a passage, it says, hell is never satisfied, so are the desires of man. So if our hearts are never satisfied and God is infinite, it takes an infinite God to satisfy a heart that's never satisfied. So it's like having men who can point you to God, having men who can let you know that lust, that those cravings, you don't feed lust to overcome lust.
Yeah.
You have to take your heart that is never satisfied and give it to a God that's never ending. That's the fit. God is the missing piece. And helping men wrestle through temptations. I think we all have temptations differently. Men have temptations, women have different temptations. Sometimes they can look the same, sometimes they're a little bit different. But just really showing men how to have proper boundaries, But I really think just mentors and pastors and spiritual moms and spiritual fathers, those things go a long way. Like having people who are older than us validate us in godly ways.
Yes.
So ask for help.
Let me
just say that. Ask for help.
Be vulnerable.
We're done. That's all you need.
Ask for help. Yeah.
Speaking of having a pastor, mentor, leader, coach, that's actually also what Damien does and who he is. Part of the intro that I kind of left out is not only is he the associate pastor at Real Life, but he also is the founder of Don't Awaken Love Too Early conference, Conf. You can go find it on Instagram. We got to come last year with our team.
So fun.
And it was a major highlight of the year. It was such
so much
a
fun.
blast.
Yeah.
But the messages were so powerful. It's one of those times where you're like, everybody in the world needs to be here right now.
Right.
How can we get this message to every person? So you're not only doing that for your 3 children, but you're doing that for a generation. You're doing that for people who you lead. So we're going to ask you some questions based on this expert we have, Masters in Counseling.
Masters in Counseling. I didn't even know that either. That's awesome.
I'm not an expert.
Okay, so here's one. Is there a too fast in Christian dating? Like where they're moving too fast? Like I'm signing my last name as his, like I did.
I would say dating is about collecting data.
Ooh, that's a mic drop.
Yep.
Yeah.
Wait a second. We have so many questions about dating, and that just summed it up so good. You're collecting data. Okay, expound on that.
So, like, I always try to think dating is setting aside recreational time with someone you're interested with to see if they have the character to be a life partner.
Why are we even here?
I know, we should have had that earlier.
So with that being said, obviously, you can discern if someone's a life partner in a month, but you don't also have to wait 3 years if you're collecting the right data and asking the right questions.
Okay, so what question? That's so good.
Now, break it down for these guys and girls out there that are like, what do I ask?
Well, I think every dating relationship has its own rhythm.
Yeah.
And, I think I always encourage couples who are dating, don't grab more intimacy than what you can handle what's needed, right? Yeah. So, fellas, don't be asking her questions to get to her heart if you're not willing to steward her heart.
That's so good.
So right there's a pace that you're not ready to move at a particular rhythm. So stay her friend, cultivate the friendship, which could be 3 years, 4 years. And then when you're ready to steward her heart, then you can ask her questions to have access to her heart.
Wow.
But if you're not willing to steward her heart, don't ask those questions to get to her heart.
Wow.
I mean, even speaking as like a single woman, like hearing that is so validating to like our hearts as women. Like even the women that are listening, I'm sure you can be like, that is exactly what I want. Yeah. I want someone who's going to fight for me.
She tweets the podcast to the guy, hey, did you hear this yet?
Exactly. I think that's like super valuable for men to even hear. Like as they're building relationship with women, you don't have to dive right in just because you think that's what she would want. Like there's actually so much safety and trust being built while you're cultivating that friendship you're talking
and
about.
I would say to the ladies out there who actually wants a guy to pursue her heart, make sure you don't do it at the pace that you're outpacing him in romance. Okay. I always tell women, match his pace of romance that is connected to his character, in the sense of like if he's asking for your heart and he's pursuing you, then you can match that and respond, but don't outpace him. Yeah. If he's not showing you in his character, his actions. Matter of fact, I say words. Right, actions speak louder than words, but patterns speak louder than actions. So don't just go off of actions. You need to look at his patterns. Because he can open the door for you, but does that mean that's his pattern of being chivalrous? Or is he just trying to like really make a good impression? You don't want someone to make a good impression. You want someone to be the impression that they're trying to make. Like, is this you? So I always say like match his pace, don't outpace him. So, because I think that's super important. I think biblical romance, guys pursue, women respond. Yeah. It doesn't mean that you can't show them you're interested, but the moment you show them you're interested, let him see if he wants to pursue.
Yes.
Yeah,
and if he doesn't pursue, don't start losing yourself to show him you're more interested. Yeah. Like, back up. Slow down. Stop acting thirsty. No, I was like...
It's not Thirsty Thursday. It's Find Jesus Friday.
Yeah, because if you act like you're thirsty, you may get somebody who you thought you want, that you really don't want.
Exactly.
And because if you make yourself more physically, letting them know like, hey, I can be sexual. I can do compromising things to let you know I can be that. Then you're attracting the wrong type of God. Because I would say if you want a man of God, there's something about a righteous woman that a man of God can't deny. So if you just focus on being in right standing with God, you'll give off the right aroma. You'll get off the right vibe. And that man of God is going to be like,
Someone listening needs
She
to
is
hear
beautiful inside and out.
Yes.
That's wifey material.
I love that.
Yes.
Okay, well then, off of what you were saying, how for a guy, so for all our men speaking or listening to, how do you know when to like stop pursuing if the girl isn't like showing a bunch of interest, like because I mean there's like two different camps. There's like pursue at all cost until she's like get off of me.
No.
Yeah, and then there's like at the slightest sense of maybe she doesn't like it, run.
She didn't
like
text
what is
back right away.
like when do you stop pursuing?
I think I would tell the guy stop pursuing when she stops responding. Now, it's different if she doesn't respond to a text or she doesn't respond to a phone call. Well, she might be at work and couldn't respond, right? But if she has a pattern of like not responding to text, a pattern of not really being engaging towards you and towards your pursuit, then you can just ask a simple question and not be afraid to be rejected. Hey, I don't know if I'm reading these signs right, but I like you. I want to get to know you. And I think it's good to ask questions because, and then if a guy asks that questions, ladies, be very honest.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's so true.
Don't give him hope if you don't want him to have hope.
That's such a good
Yes.
Don't be like, well, maybe in the future, and you really don't feel that way.
No.
Now, be honest. Like, no, I see you as a friend. You're a great guy, but I just want to keep it that way. That way, he can go pursue someone else.
Yeah.
But sometimes, if you're desperate for attention, you try to leave a little bit of like
maybe a little wiggle room.
Yeah.
That's a good point. We actually have a blog on that.
You hanging here,
you know,
so
it's
that
a
it
benefit.
feeds what I need it to feed till I find the other guy that I actually want.
That's wrong.
She said it.
You
She
said it.
said it.
I did it once. It was
I know.
terrible.
We've all done it. We've all
I
done
mean,
it.
yeah, that's fair. That's fair. Hey guys, if you're like me, then you learn best through interaction. And if that's the case, then the 40-day journey to purity is for you. This is 40 days of amazing content written on the topics of sexuality, sex, relationships, dating, all of those amazing topics that I know you have questions on. And for each day, there are interactive videos and questions. So it's really in depth. You guys should definitely check it out at morerevolution.com and get yours today.
Okay, so you kind of touched on it, but dive deeper into the whole, for all the girls listening, how can you, because most girls don't want to be like, I pursued him and chased him down.
Yeah.
Like, they want to be pursued, but they're like, man, does he have any sign of seeing any signal? What should they do to show some interest without feeling like they're like going after him?
I'll just let you guys know, like Stacy and I, our situation, because she showed me she was interested, and then I was like, all right, I got it from here. You interested? I got it from here. Say less. But I think it's different. It's different per person, per woman. I think what I'm gonna share is not a formula. But Stacy did it to what she felt comfortable and what she would consider. Hey, I want to be classy. I want to be respectful of myself. So she asked herself all those questions, and then she put herself out there to let me know she was interested. And so for me, since I came from such a hookup culture, and I was always the guy. I'm originally from the Bay Area, and we would use a term called pop our collars. that means you're trying to get at girls, right? So
oh my gosh.
So I was always that guy that didn't have a problem pursuing a girl that I liked or a woman that I liked. But when I was at church and I was on my abstinence journey for 3 years, I was like, God, I really don't want to mess this up. Like, I would have these conversations with God. Man, it's this girl in church. Her name is Stacy. I looked at her toes. They were pretty. The check is there. I was like, she loves the Lord, blah, blah, blah. She's in Bible college. And I would just say, God, I don't want to like try to initiate something that I'm not ready for. Could you set it up to where we'll have a conversation? That was just my prayer to God. And I kid you not, I came from a church where we previously served at. It was like a 3,500 seat sanctuary. So the the propensity of us sitting next to each other is kind of like slim to none. So for like 2 to 3 weeks in a row, the usher would sit us both together, and Stacy and I wore the same color schemes all both times.
Like, God, I hear you.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I was just like, so we'll be sitting next to each other, and on top of that, those 2 to 3 weeks, our pastor was preaching on singleness, dating, and marriage. So it was just like, I was like, you know what? All right, God, that could be coincidence.
I'm listening.
Right.
The police wet more.
I was like, okay. I was like, you know what, God? I hear you, but I need some more confirmation. Then I get a phone call from one of my spiritual mother's daughters who said, God showed me a woman that you're going to marry, and just really described Stacy, curvaceous, beautiful,
Wow.
X, Y, and Z. And so I was just like, okay. I was like, well, God, one more other thing. Like, if this is you're going to have to make it happen. Because I was like, I just don't want to mess it up. Because I felt like I romanticized a lot of good friendships. And those friendships with the opposite sex, these were really good women.
Yeah.
And I romanticized them when they should have stayed friends. And I lost good friends.
Wow.
And I hurt good women. So I just didn't want to do that no more. I had a different heart. I had different convictions. And I determined I'm not going to be that guy anymore. So then, lo and behold, I get a phone call from Stacy.
Oh.
A phone call from Stacy. And if you know Stacy, she ain't giving nobody no phone call to let her know she's interested. I get a phone call from her. She has a different rendition to this story. But I get a phone call from her, and so the phone rings, hello, and somehow we couldn't hear each other. She hung up, and then I recalled the number, and I said hello. And she was like, hi, this is Stacy. I knew who she was. And I was like, who are you? Who is this?
Oh my God.
I was nervous.
So mean.
I was nervous.
So mean.
Making her explain everything.
So Stacy said, she was very courageous to say this, because most women who do this, I always tell guys, you got to be very careful. But she said she had a dream, and in the dream, she explained it. And I bear witness to that dream. And basically in the dream, she was just explaining that I felt like God called us to connect in terms of at least start a friendship, date, and get to know each other. But really, it was about marriage.
Wow.
And then from there, that was how she showed me she was interested. And I went in my prayer time, and I was like, thank you, God.
Yeah.
Because
this
I
is
was
what I was asking for.
And then I kid you not, from that day forward, I just pursued Stacy. I pursued her heart. I stewarded her heart. We didn't have sex until we got married. We waited to consummate our marriage on our honeymoon, and that was tough for both of us. She wasn't promiscuous, but I was. So for us to be able to offer that to each other, that was a really beautiful gift.
Wow.
And we have something special. And we both showed each other that we can handle temptation.
Yeah.
Because temptation comes as a single, as a married person.
Yeah.
And what I try to tell people, if you don't learn how to, or tell couples, if you don't know how to flex that muscle, what if temptation comes to your marriage and you're trying to flex this muscle that you should have flexed as a single?
Yeah.
Yep.
And now you're trying to flex it in your marriage, and it can cause some potential challenges. So we were able to offer the gift of self-control to each other.
Oh, that's so good.
And I pursued her, and she responded.
That's so good.
The rest is history.
The
We're
rest is-
married.
I love it. We gotta talk about that muscle, because
Yeah.
that's huge. Because I think a lot of the times, even in the church, we're like, oh, well, I know we're gonna get married. Like, I know we're gonna be together forever.
Yeah.
And so I love that perspective of working out that muscle and giving it as a gift, and just, it's really like it's like it's not a red flag. It's like, oh, he has self-control. Oh, she has self-control. Like, it builds trust too.
Yeah, yes, yeah. I think it's super important because self-control is not a switch you can turn on and off.
Yeah.
You can't say, I'm gonna have self-control in these areas, but I'm gonna be a little bit lascivious in this area. So it's super helpful for our marriage because there were seasons in our marriage where our sex life took different turns for more physical reasons, more medical reasons. And because I had the muscle of self-control, I was able to still honor my wife and not feel like I'm gonna die because we are not frequently having sex on the level that we both want, but just some challenges arose. And therefore I can keep honoring our relationship. But for some guys, our girls, if you don't have that self-control muscle, then you actually think you got to give in to this temptation and all these different type of things. And
Definitely.
Yeah.
I think even with that too, if you're introducing like sexuality into your relationship so soon, especially, you don't, like, emotions can get so skewed. Like, sexuality builds such a connection, and bonds really do get built with another person, whether you believe it or not, they do. And so when you're introducing that, especially early on in a dating relationship, you could go months and months and years without realizing, man, there's actually not a level of connection here, and I didn't realize it, and now you know, now we're married, and like, whoa, do we connect? Like, are we friends? And so I'm like, I'm speaking as a single. We've got 2 married people over here, so all my singles, I hear you, like, I'm not married, and I get like how hard that feeling is to be like, I've got to withhold here. Like, is God withholding from me? Are they get to have fun? I don't. And there's people who, you know, you're seeing people who aren't Christian doing whatever they want with their body and whatever. But there's this like inner drive inside of you that's like, man, I'm fighting for something. I'm fighting for something. I'm fighting for this within my marriage, but I'm also doing it as an internal thing with me and the Lord. It's not just about my goal of getting married. I'm not gonna not have sex just so I can have a sexy, hot sex life with my husband one day. I'm doing it because this is my relationship with God that I'm stewarding. So I'm building that with the Lord, and I'm also building that muscle you guys are talking about. That's apparently very, very important in marriage as well.
It doesn't stop being important.
And just to be vulnerable, it was hard to try to practice being abstinent with Stacy until we got married. So for all the singles out there, it was difficult. It wasn't.
It's not.
It wasn't
easy.
like I was just like, I got this superhuman power. It was hard. We crossed lines. We had to recalibrate our relationship. We had to like start learning better boundaries, tag more accountability in. And it was hard, and it should be hard. Because if attraction is playing too little, then I would ask, are you trying to put romance on a friendship? You should be like, I want to touch you. You should be like, I want to kiss you, but I'm not. So
Yes. Okay, speaking to your single season, those 3 years of being abstinent and just, I mean, I'm sure you dedicated those to the Lord, again, just part of your story. But how did you combat loneliness when you're single?
So I think it's hard to be single successfully if you're not devoted to the Lord. I think, so one of the ways that I combated being single and not being lonely, I had moments of loneliness. However, in those moments, I feel like the Holy Spirit would show me that I'm not alone. He would lead me to community. And I think it's so important to bond with non-romantic relationships before you try to have a romantic relationship. Because too many times we're outsourcing particular needs in romance that we can get in a friendship, that we can get in a mentor relationship, that we can get in community, that we can get with a pastor. So when there were moments where I felt alone, I reached for community. Because in community, what I thought in my aloneness, I wanted romance. It was just like, I just needed a good conversation. I just needed a good movie to watch with a friend. I just needed a pastor to speak into my life. But I think that's where the hiccup can come in, is that when people feel alone, they reach for romance. And then the danger of reaching for romance and not building a non-romantic relationship is now, since you have no friends or community that you've learned to be vulnerable with to meet those needs where you feel like you need someone, what happens is you get into a romantic relationship, and now you put all this pressure on this one person to be everything, when Stacy is my everything, but she can't be everything. I have a spiritual father, I have friends, I have mentors, I have recreation. So therefore, I'm not putting all this pressure on this one relationship, because in my single season, I developed a lot of non-romantic relationships to help sustain me when I get in a romantic relationship.
So good. This is so valuable.
All the mic drops just like every 5 seconds.
Oh, it's so good. Okay. Next question. When in the dating relationship do you share your juicy, your history?
Your juicy
Because a lot
history.
of times, and I just heard Sloan's story earlier, that on one of her first dates, she said,
my God.
I'm a virgin. Which it's okay.
I know, I was like, I just want to be vulnerable, and like, that's just who I am. I'm vulnerable, and I went on this first date, and I'm like, I'm a virgin, so okay. Thankfully,
Nice
he
to
was
meet
great.
you.
Like, nice to meet you. Oh yeah, my name is Sloan, by the way. I'm so sorry.
That's so good funny.
But a lot lot of times because you're like trying to get to know, but even like you talked about earlier of not asking questions about their heart till you're ready to steward it. It's the same thing. Like I'm not ready to steward your sexual history on date 1.
Right. Like,
but when you ask get to know you questions, or if you're bad at asking questions, you might be like, tell me your testimony, and then you're like, I know too much. Like, what do I do with this
your
person?
Your whole genealogy.
So where do you think, or what's your advice in that realm?
That's tough because, I mean, you need the Holy Spirit in that because there may be an interaction where you're like, I need to be honest about this.
Yeah.
I think the goal was always trying to be more than friends, less than lovers. So what do I mean by that is in the friendship stage, when I find myself wanting to be more than friends, and when I say less than lovers, I just mean not being sexually active. But when I find myself being attracted to the person spiritually, emotionally, all those different things to the degree I'm ready to pursue another level with them, I think every level of commitment requires intimacy. So if I'm trying to take a new level of commitment, then I need to reveal more levels of myself. So if we're friends, and now from friends to now exclusively dating, that's a new commitment.
Yep.
Yeah.
So that new commitment needs to now require new intimacy. Typically, we try to give intimacy before we establish commitment. I think you got to establish commitment, then you give intimacy.
Yep.
So that way I'm not sharing things that you have not committed to steward or want to even be a part of.
Yeah.
So I personally shared a lot of my history with Stacy the moment I knew that I wanted to pursue her. Like the moment I knew, like, hey, I want you to be my girlfriend, and we started pursuing each other, then I needed to be honest about my past. I needed to be honest about my sexuality. I need to be honest that, hey, I have a son. I think for me having a kid, I think that's kind of something you want to bring up front.
Yeah. You're not going to wait till like
3 years later.
You don't want to be six dates in and like, oh, by the way, I have an 8-year-old. So I just think that there's things that you can share as friends, and I think community, accountability will kind of help you wrestle with that.
Yeah, totally.
People who know you, can kind of help you break that down.
So good.
Yeah. Well, before we wrap this up, I think there's one question that we typically get. Our More Revolution DMs are blown up with this question quite a bit. How would you navigate building friendships as like the opposite sex? Like if you, like you were saying, even during that period where you were single and abstinence, how did you build friendship with the opposite sex without trying to over communicate, like all of that?
It sounds like you can tell us how not to as well.
Yeah, exactly. I know. I'm like, the juicy details.
It's tough because I come from a more conservative background when it at least in my church upbringing. I didn't start going to church till I was like 24, 25, or excuse me, 22, 23, and then got into ministry school. And I think part of my early part of being in ministry school, they just kind of like inbred it. Like if you're a pastor, you're moving towards this direction, there needs to be a lot of accountability with the opposite sex. So I know from my conviction, maybe not everyone will take that stance, but I think building relationship with the opposite sex, what I tell the young adults is do it within community.
Yeah.
Do it within community. I think there's always, not always, excuse me, often there's one person that may have feelings about the other person that the other person doesn't have.
Yeah.
So I think that when those type of situations arise, I think you just gotta be kind of careful. It's happened to me a couple times, even to Stacy, where we're friends. I gave her my number.
Yeah.
We served together. And then they kind of started using my number, not around serving, hey, what you doing? And hey, what are you doing later? And I think at those moments, I just kind of was very upfront with those people to the degree I think I was a little bit more rude. But I would just be upfront, like, hey, I'm just spending time with family. Do you want to kick it and hang out? And I was very upfront. I was like, hey, if we hang out, I prefer to just kind of keep it in a church setting.
Yeah.
I see you as my sister.
Oh, you pulled that?
I know.
My brother in Christ.
I don't have the best advice in this area. But
well, I think up front is
that's a great thing. Yeah.
Because for me, like I wanted to be up front. For one, I want to sabotage myself from having weak moments to where if we're friends and I know you have these feelings towards me and you catch me in a weak moment and now I'm taking advantage of that friendship, I kind of was like, let me just be up front so you know where I stand.
Yes.
That's so good.
And that helped me to love my sisters in Christ and love my friends well once I got saved, to where we didn't cross lines.
Yeah.
The moment I got saved, I didn't, I wasn't messing around with other girls. I didn't have any of those issues because I set really strong boundaries. One of my strong boundaries was I wasn't alone with the opposite sex.
Yeah.
We didn't date, we didn't hang out unless I was intentional. I want to reserve that for my wife.
Wait, we want to pause it
Yeah.
right there because we need to hear that again.
What? Which one?
That part, because those boundaries, those are so healthy because
Yeah.
there's no question.
Yeah.
And I think that's where all of the questions come in. Is like, oh, we went and had lunch together. Oh yeah, we just hung out. You're
Yeah.
like, well, I'm over here thinking that was a date, and
Yeah.
he's like, no, I just hang out with all these girls all the time.
Right.
So you were single and you had your own boundaries and
Yeah.
values, but
That's
I don't
awesome.
hang out alone.
Yeah, I would say that, and they thought I was weird when I
Yeah.
said that. They was like, "It's just coffee," and I was like, "Yeah, maybe just coffee to you, but to me, I don't want to put us in that situation." But I would still try to be nice and make sure I showed them a lot of love at church. But I really want to reserve those intimate moments for the one that I really did want to pursue. Because if I'm doing those intimate moments of like hanging out one-on-one, then for me, I was like, well, the person who I do want to pursue, I don't want them to think that we're an
I just did
idol.
this with
Yeah.
everybody.
Yeah. So,
That's such a good point.
but
So good.
But on the other end, I do know people who have those relationships,
yeah.
and they didn't come from a promiscuous background like me. So I think I needed stronger boundaries based on my
Yeah.
temptations with
Yeah.
opposite sex. Other people, I think they can like have different flexible boundaries. So
Yeah.
I just really think it's important to make those decisions in community.
Yeah.
So my community, my pastors would say, because they knew my life, these are some healthy boundaries for you.
Yeah.
For someone else, it could be a little bit different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But for the most part, any of the girls that would ask, can we hang out? They had intentions of like grooming me to be somebody they want to
Grooming
be.
me.
True.
I think it's,
Are you
that's
cultivating
really
a
good
friendship
point,
or are you
though.
trying to groom a lover?
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yes.
I think that's what it is too. It's because like I have a really good guy friend in my life that's been in my life for years and years and years. But what makes him different as a guy friend and a boyfriend is those clear, like it's clear, it's defined. It's not just no one's assuming anything on the other person. There's trust built there because of communication. Like there's been communication and there's been clear conversations surrounding that topic. So I think that's big, and I think you're so right in the way that you're basically saying you gotta know yourself too. You gotta understand your history. You gotta understand like your convictions and your core values and your temptations. Even I think that's such a good point.
Yeah, super important.
Yeah,
Love it.
it.
We could keep going.
I mean, honestly,
We could, but we're gonna stop because those of you who are podcast listeners are probably like, I can't. I got to my destination and I'm just sitting in my car because I want to keep listening. Do you ever do that? You're like, I don't want to pause this podcast. I want to keep going. So, Damien, thank you so much for being with us. That was incredible. Honestly, you had so many one-liners. I'm like, we need to go back and take all of the notes because it was so good, so wise. Thank you for sharing your life with us.
Appreciate you guys having me. Yeah.
Awesome. And if you want to find Damien on Instagram, we will tag him in the show notes.
Sure.
And Dalte Real Life Church, if you're in the Sacramento area, it's the bomb. Dalte Conf, is it happening in 2021?
It is with all the.
I know.
Yeah,
like,
so we're making some modifications. We'll figure it out.
You want to be there in person if so, because it is a blast.
So
it is not your typical church conference. We danced.
I danced so much.
We turned up.
Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you guys for listening. If you want to learn more and check out all of our awesome content, be sure to head to our website at moralrevolution.com and our socials, Instagram, Facebook, all of them. But before you leave, don't forget to like, review, subscribe, all of the things. We want you guys to come back and join us. We enjoyed having you. See you next time.